Hi guys.
Hi.
Today we thought we would talk about what the difference is between keto and low carb. Because it's January, there's lots of new people coming to keto and coming to low carb. And it is a little bit confusing what the difference is and what the benefits are and things like that. So I thought we'd cover them today.
Yes, and we have on Facebook a Facebook group and it's called Aussie Low Carb Community. And I think a lot of people are drawn to it because
they think it's not going to have keto people in it.
It's not keto, it's low carb. And then we're mainly keto and a lot of the people in the group who follow us are also keto. So there kind of tends to be this
tension.
Yeah, between keto and low carb, which I don't think is really necessary. So we wanted to perhaps talk about it and give our opinion.
Our opinion, yeah. So we'll touch on what is low carb first. Low carb is kind of a much broader scope in terms of it really, in my opinion, is anything lower carb than the standard Australian American diet.
Yeah, and I guess in general we would say under 100 grams of carbs a day would count as low carb. And there's obviously within that a big variance between different people.
And keto comes under that. So if you are keto, you are low carb by default.
Yeah, so it's not like you're one or the other. If you're trying to get your body into a state of ketosis, which is what the ketogenic diet is, that means you need to eat low carb to get there.
Yeah, so you're automatically low carb.
Yes, so there's not necessarily this big difference between the two. Keto is perhaps a more stricter version of low carb, where for people to be in a state of ketosis, which is the aim of a ketogenic diet, you generally need to eat 20 grams of carbs or less per day. For some people, they can eat more than that and be in ketosis. Some people, it may need to be less. It just depends on you. But the ketogenic diet is a low carb diet. That's the point of it. So we don't need to be having, tension amongst low carb versus keto. We're all kind of trying to do the same thing.
We're all aiming for a similar outcome, is health, improving our health by restricting our carbs.
So I guess sometimes you hear about, that's not keto and that type of thing. Keto there's not a food that's keto or not keto. There's foods that are low carb and not low carb, and generally you need to eat low carb to be in a state of ketosis. But some people can eat
pumpkin, for instance, or carrot that people might say is not keto,
and be in a state of ketosis. The goal of the diet is to be in ketosis, not to have foods that are not keto. I mean, ideally, the more metabolically flexible you are, you could perhaps eat higher carb things and still be in a state of ketosis, depending on your health and well-being. That would be ideal, right?
That's right. But that can take time. So the other thing that I was going to touch on is that sometimes you might be low carb for a little while and then you might be keto for a little while. Labels seem to be really important to people. Yeah. But to be honest, it's really what works for you.
Yes. And really all of us are just trying to avoid, pasta, bread, all of those kind of mainstream foods and stick to, more vegetables, meats,
nuts,
whole
seeds,
foods.
that kind of thing.
So what would you say was the benefit of someone saying they're low carb versus keto?
I would say it's probably the flexibility. There's a little bit, it's not quite as strict, it's not quite as knuckling down to that 20 grams or forcing your body to be in ketosis. So I would say the benefit is there's a little bit more flexibility there. Yeah,
you can certainly eat probably a wider range of vegetables and things. It probably is a little bit easier, I guess, if you had, you're feeding a family and that type of thing, you're trying to fit in amongst things. There's less probably need to track carbohydrates and whatnot. On a ketogenic diet, you probably need to be fairly aware of your carb count to keep it in check. I mean, over time, you come to know. But at the start, certainly, there's probably a little bit more work to if your aim is to be in ketosis.
And it's probably easier to transition from a standard diet to a low carb diet than a standard diet to a keto diet. It's a much bigger jump and seems almost really unrealistic almost for some people, thinking if you're coming from bread, pasta, rice every meal.
You can't even have carrots.
To cabbage has 10 grams of carb, whatever. That's not a good example, but
yes,
to having to think about what carbs are in vegetables, I think it's too big a leap. Whereas I feel transitioning from standard diet to low carb might be an easier transition, and then maybe you roll into keto as you get more confident.
And I guess a lot of people tend to come to this from perhaps paleo. So maybe they go from a regular diet to paleo, where they're having more sweet potato maple syrup, and then they they learn about other things and think maybe I need to cut those out. So it can be a progression, and a paleo diet is still generally quite low in carb as well.
What would you say the downfalls are of a low carb diet versus a keto diet?
I guess for me personally, I notice the difference if I'm not in a state of ketosis.
Yeah, the feeling.
That is an awesome feeling. It definitely improves my hunger signals. I know when I'm in ketosis, I'm definitely less hungry. I have more energy. I have more better mood, more mental, I just feel more alive sort of. And there can be that stage where you're low carb, like for me, because I need to be quite low carb to be in ketosis. If I was doing, say, 50 grams of carbs a day, I would probably feel in this, what can be known as low carb purgatory. You're kind of restricting your foods, probably hungry, but you're not getting the benefits of ketosis. Whereas if I just went a bit lower with my carbs, I would actually feel better, which seems strange, but that's probably for me. What about you?
One of the other downfalls of low carb, especially if you're not tracking, is carb creep. So it's very easy to kind of transition away from your standard diet, going into low carb, and snacking creeps in. Carb creep easily keeps in, and this happens to me because I feel when I'm in maintenance, which is where I am now, that I can eat a little bit more low carb than keto, but the carb creep happens really quickly for me.
And in particular, if you're then, as part of your low carb diet, having all the low carb substitutes, so the low carb bread, low carb pasta, that
the
can
sweet
easily
treats
add up. Whereas in keto, those things are generally off the table or pretty limited because of the carb allowance.
Much more of a treat than sometimes in low carb. They easily become an everyday thing again. So what would you think the benefits of keto are versus low carb?
I guess what I've already said, it really helps me with my appetite suppression, which I think is a big thing for, if you're trying to lose weight, that makes it easier. Also, it makes it easier for me to fast, which I want to do for my health and well-being, and I do feel better when I do that. And if I'm in ketosis, that's easier.
It's an easier transition.
Than if I wasn't. It's much more difficult to fast. I just feel better, more energy, mental clarity, all of those things just make it easier. And then when you're feeling good, it's easy to keep momentum and motivation because you're like, wow, I'm feeling really great. I want to keep doing this. And I guess we've been doing this a while now, so it's not as challenging for us as if you were starting out. So over time, it does get easier. We can eat out most places and find something that's suitable. And we don't have any of that other things in our house. So it's easy for us from that perspective. I know not everybody has that, flexibility. The downfalls of keto, I guess, as you said, it is more restrictive than low carb, particularly when you're eating out. It can be a little challenging, and you have to be that annoying person that asks for none of that, a side of avocado. But you know what? Who cares?
And usually now at most places, people are happy to accommodate your needs as well. One of the downfalls for me with keto is keto breath. Bad, really bad. And nothing really helps. Brushing my teeth, sugar-free mints. I even use a tongue scraper. It's pretty bad for me. And also keto dreams. I have some serious keto dreams, but they're all manageable, to be honest.
Is it worth it for the positive?
It is for me.
Yeah. I mean, for us, definitely, we would probably say we'd more stick to a ketogenic diet. But if we're traveling, we're not tracking our carbs, so we probably are more low carb sometimes than others. So
it swings and roundabouts for us. Keto sometimes, other times it'll be a little bit more low carb. we're not that strict on the labels.
Yes.
Just don't get hung up on the labels.
I think that's the message.
The number one key for us is always you have to find what works for you. Keto works really well for some people, and low carb works really well for some people.
And don't get into a mindset where it has to be one or the other, because I think that's where you can get caught out, where you're like, oh, I couldn't possibly do keto, I could only do low carb. Well, maybe try low carb, see how it works for you. If it's not working great, or you're not getting the benefits that you want, maybe try keto, or vice versa.
Yeah, like if you think you're out for dinner and there's a bit of pumpkin on your plate, the world's not going to end if you're keto and you eat a little bit of pumpkin.
Yeah, so just don't be so hung up on labels. And remember, let's not get caught up with arguing amongst low carb and keto people. We are the ones who, have a shared vision about what a healthy diet is.
Yep.
And we should be, banding together to communicate change with most people who are still eating standard diets.
So just remember, whatever works for you is the key. We hope you found this video useful. If you have, please make sure you give it a thumbs up. And thanks so much for watching, guys.
Bye.
Bye.